If I told you that giants do exist, would you believe me? Or would you have to see to believe? Tales of giants are just a few of the stories I've heard growing up as a Dene person in the Northwest Territories, the subarctic region of so-called Canada. I'm from Denendeh, meaning land of the people in my Dene language. Dene means flowing from earth. We span across the continent from north to south, east to west, along the Athabascan Trail, all the way to our Dene relatives in the United States. My ancestral homelands are on the shores of two of the largest freshwater lakes in the world, Tucho, meaning big water, and Satu, meaning Bear Lake. It's safe to say I'm far from home today, here in the South. When living and working in an Indigenous nation territory, it's important to first be invited in as a guest. This is often forgotten, yet sometimes it's undeniable. Like the time I served as a counselor for my First Nation, the Yellowknives Dene. I was in a band council meeting in a community called Detta, meaning burnt point, when all of a sudden we heard the sound of skidoo engines outside. Now, it's not uncommon to hear the sound of skidoos in the north in the winter, but there were so many and they were so loud that we couldn't ignore it. We all got up, walked over to the large windows that overlooked Tucho to see a long lineup of at least 100 skidoos in a row on the frozen lake, looking like they were about to start a race. What were they waiting for, I wondered. There was some commotion with administration running up and down the stairs. I'm not sure if a few phone calls were made, but what I do know is that it was incumbent upon the chief to step outside on the balcony alone. He stood there in -30 without a jacket on, as the drivers sat idling on their skidoos looking up at him from afar. He looked like royalty, like a king about to make a speech. With just one nod and a wave, the skidoos took off in the direction east to where they knew the caribou were. It was our Katłıà relatives, respectfully asking for permission to cross boundaries to hunt. Now, if this were to take place 100 years ago, it would have been a long lineup of howling dog teams in place of skidoos. That day, I witnessed how the Katłıà had not only asked for permission to cross boundaries, they also made an unspoken promise without the need for a legal contract, to share with the Yellowknives if their communal hunt was successful. This is protocol. This is Dene law. And this is what true land acknowledgement can look like. It is an exchange that can be found inside a slight nod and a wave. Growing up, my grandmother always taught me to give an offering of thanks wherever I go on my journeys. I'm to put a coin down on the ground as a form of land acknowledgement. What if everyone in the world paid their respects to Mother Earth in this way? What if Mother Earth had a giant guitar case opened in front of her outside the shops on the busy, dirty streets of the city for us to drop coins in as she sang her sorrowful songs? What if we gave back to Mother Earth instead of constantly taking from her? I am a storyteller, but I didn't always know it. I've had many careers in my lifetime, but nothing that felt truly fulfilling. Up until recently, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, even though I'm a grandmother now. And so, like with any big decision I've had to make in my life, I turned to Creator for guidance on which career path I should take. You see, I worked hard to get a law degree, but I spent the majority of my time in law school writing stories when I probably should have been studying. Did I want to continue on in the legal profession even though it made me unhappy, yet paid the bills? Or did I want to follow my passion of being a storyteller, even though it didn't guarantee a paycheck? I didn't find the answer I was looking for until I removed myself from everyday distractions and entered into silence, until I immersed myself in nature. I spent a few days at my friend's cabin on Satu. It was a beautiful getaway, and on my last day there, I went for a hike in the tracks of a caribou. I stopped in my own tracks when I saw a feather at my feet. It wasn't just any old feather. It had 2 white spots on either side of the middle line. I picked it up, brought it back to the cabin, and flattened it in a book. Later on, I found out it was a loon feather. Now, I knew I was gifted that feather, and even more, I knew it had a message for me. I just didn't know what the message was right then. I believe that our lifespan emulates that of a feather. We're to try to stay in the middle of the feather from the beginning of our life to the very end. Yet sometimes we go off track along the wisps of the feather and have to come back to the center. A few days after finding that loon feather, I was visiting with an elder, interviewing him for a book I was writing. We sat on his porch in the hot summer sun, and he told me many stories of his time hunting and trapping out on the land in his younger days. It was starting to get late when I said, well, I should probably get going. But the elder said, wait, I have one more story to tell you. And that is when he proceeded to tell me the story of the loon. It's a story that his grandfather told him in our Dene language, because our stories are much more powerful when told in our language, as there are words that English just can't describe. But because I cannot understand my language fluently, through no fault of my own, the elder warmly reminds me, he resorts to telling me in English. Loon has a good heart, he starts. Loon was once pitch black, no markings. One day, Loon came across an old man who was blind. The man was sitting on a rock by the water, listening to the birds in spring and all the sounds around. But Loon could see that the man looked sad. Loon came up to the man and asked, "Why are you sad?" The old man replied, "I can hear you, but I can't see you." Loon then said, "Hold on to my wings." The old man did as Loon instructed and got onto Loon's back and held onto his wings, and together they dove down under the water over and over and over again. And on the third dive, when they came back up to the surface, the old man opened his eyes and cried, "I can see." Loon made a beautiful calling sound and flapped his wings out of joy. Back on shore, the old man wanted to gift Loon something in return for giving him the gift of sight. But all he had was a bone necklace. He took off that necklace, tossed it onto Loon's neck, and it spun around and around and around until it settled. And that is why today Loon has the most spectacular bone design on his neck out of all the other winged ones on the lake. I was speechless, but I somehow found the words. I found a loon feather just the other day, and I was hoping to find out what it meant. You found that loon feather for a reason, the elder tells me knowingly, assuringly. You're helping people see. It was the answer I'd been looking for. I found my calling, my loon calling. The story that the elder told me that day is thousands of years old, yet it felt so relevant to me in that very moment that it was like it was waiting in the wings, no pun intended, for the right time to present itself. Our stories are like that. They're so powerful that some take a lifetime to understand, yet some are gifted in the blink of an eye that you might walk right past that special feather. Our stories hold teachings. Our stories hold truth. Our stories hold ink on, which translates to medicine in my language. Our stories have the power to heal and help guide us on our journeys in life. It's important to get to know the stories in the place where you live and where you come from, because every landmark across this country has Indigenous place-based teachings that can help guide you on your path. Now, I know you're waiting for me to get back to the giants. Well, we do have a large lake creature living in our waters in the north. How could there not be? Tucho has 300-foot drop cliffs sheathed in the world's oldest volcanic rock and known depths of up to 1,000 feet. Take away the water and you're standing on the top of a mountain. Imagine the Grand Canyon filled with water, then times that by 100. How do I know it to be true that a lake creature bigger than the size of a school bus exists? Because my elders have seen it with their own eyes, and I choose to believe them. But for many, it takes seeing to believe. Why are we still so skeptical? We have stories of living alongside giant animals like the wolverine, muskrat, and sawcho, meaning giant beaver. But no one believed us until the bones of a giant beaver were found a few years ago by our Dene neighbors in the Yukon. The sawcho would have been the size of a large bear. There's the proof. We also have stories of two legendary Dene hero brothers who fended off these giant animals, one of whom chased 3 giant beavers across the north, found them and killed them, and put their pelts on the side of a mountain that we call Bear Rock to dry in the sun. The oil from their pelts dripped down into the ground, and in that area is where the first oil deposit in Canada was ever found, in a place we call Cligoli, meaning where there is oil. Sadly, community members have not benefited from the oil extracted out of the ground over the decades. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Last winter, they had to pay $5 a liter of gas. An elder in a gathering once said, "One day, water will be more than gas." And he was right. A bottle of water nowadays can run up to more than $5. It's a far cry from when we used to be able to drink water straight from the lake for free. And it reminds me of the words of the late Dene prophet Aya, who said Satu will be the last freshwater lake in the world, and that people from all over will flock to it. Water, our most precious resource. Our bodies are a reflection of Mother Earth. Our skin is the soil, our bones are the rocks, our lungs are the trees, and our blood is the water. We need the trees to breathe. We need the water to live. If water is the lifeblood of Mother Earth, then what would happen if her arteries were blocked? What if the rivers become so low that the water no longer flows? If the rivers dry up, this can lead to a massive heart attack. Yes, Mother Earth has a figurative beating heart, and it is working harder than ever. The Dai-Cho, meaning Big River, Canada's largest river, and once our northern gateway before highways were built, is now so low in certain areas that barges still needed to get across to our remote northern communities are getting stuck on sandbars. This is due to man-made climate change and the cumulative impacts of 3 major hydro dams upstream, the Tultsin, the Bennett, and the controversial Site C. All 3 dams are holding back water and destroying wetlands. Now, I can't help but feel that this has something to do with the 3 giant beaver pelt land formations located on Bear Rock. You see, Bear Rock is located on the shores of the Dai-Cho, and what is a hydro dam if nothing but a giant beaver dam? Could it be that the story serves as a prophecy for where we are today with the 3 dams upstream impacting our waterways? Call it a coincidence if you will, but I don't believe in coincidence. Through our stories, we prophesize the future, both literally and metaphorically, despite being historically scoffed at. Stories of the hero brothers do not stop in our home territory either. They can be found among our Diné relatives, the Navajo, who we share a similar language with, and as far as the Mayans and beyond. How can it be that we have very similar stories from thousands of years ago across miles and miles of separation between us without modern-day forms of communication? I was told by a Diné healer that Indigenous people form the belt around Mother Earth. We've always been connected, and we know how to pass our stories on through the generations. Our stories are not folklore. They're much older than modern-day science. They encompass quantum metaphysics. Our stories are foundational laws on how man and nature can coexist in harmony, and they go back to the beginning of time. Uplifting and unearthing our Indigenous stories is what it's going to take to help save us from our own self-destruction. Why must we wait to see devastation in our own backyard before we take action on climate change? Humanity is in peril. We're seeing increased weather events, forest fires, landslides, flooding, drought, the list goes on. It's time to consider our stories as teachings of survival. Our stories can provide valid reasoning and insight as to why we must put nature above industry at all costs. Our stories are warnings of the future and lessons of the past that have been silenced through colonization, and now it's time to bring them into the forefront because story has the power to change the narrative and the doomsday trajectory that we're on. It is money that is holding us back from making this change because the solution to the climate crisis cannot be capitalized on. It's free, and that's not good for the corporate agenda. So I will leave you with this one last question. Is money worth more than the health of our planet? If your answer is no, please place your offering into that old guitar case because Mother Earth needs it now more than ever. I ask you to believe without seeing.